A lot of this book is written about Belgium, northern France and Flanders, Belgian Flanders, yes, of which Ypres and the Ypres salient are Messines, well-known battles that the New Zealanders were involved in 1917, so that part of Belgium. Well, it's part of New Zealand's heritage, and although Gallipoli has been emphasised for generations, what the New Zealand division did after that, when it went to France on the Western Front, is actually much more significant and deserves equal prominence in the national consciousness. But the Great War, it's interesting how down the generations it haunts people, it's still a motive, and as generation succeeds generation, there is an increasing amount of interest in what happened there 90 odd years ago rather than a diminishing interest. It's also almost the centennial of the start of that war in 2014, where New Zealand's contribution was quite disproportionate to its size. And so it's part of history worth retelling, and this is really, one hopes, taking over from the standard work that was written as long ago as 1921. Well, there was compulsory military training from 1910. And, you know, New Zealand was regarded as a colony. Australia, New Zealand, Canada. We were smaller now then, of course, than even we are now, only 1 million people. And yet they were able to dispatch nearly 10,000 partially or fully trained soldiers away within 6 weeks of the war commencing. And that's the equivalent of a country the size of the United Kingdom sending away 400,000 troops within 6 weeks. And they went with great enthusiasm. There had been, I think, 6,000 or so New Zealanders at the Boer War, but not in New Zealand units and New Zealand formations. And in particular on the Western Front, that was the first time a New Zealand division as such, a modern grouping of soldiers, was put in place. Well, they sent about 1,500 to Samoa, Germany. It was a German colony at the time, and it was taken over without any firing, any action. But you know, to get 1,500 soldiers away, mostly from the Auckland Regiment and the Wellington Regiment, territorials, were sent away within 6 days. Trained soldiers, and conducted that task very effectively. And then the main body, as it was called, of the New Zealand Expeditionary Force that went to Egypt to start with, and then Gallipoli and subsequently France, about 8,500. Apart from the last 3 months, from August to November 1918, it was largely trench warfare. And that there was, it's hard to believe it now, but there were continuous trenches, and not just single trenches, but several trenches in depth, all the way from the North Sea to the Swiss border, 500 miles, 800 kilometres. And for all but the August to November 1918 period, it was static warfare on either side, in the main defensive warfare. You can imagine what the terrain was like in such a low-lying part of the world as Flanders. Medieval drainage systems destroyed by shell fire. The highest point just south of Messines, Hill 63, which meant it was all of 63 metres above sea level. Most of the land would be less than 20 metres above sea level. And soldiers drowned in muddy water-filled shell holes. Mules and horses slipped into them and were drowned. It was an appalling situation for participants in this warfare, and an absolute quagmire. You can imagine what that would be like after 3 or 4 years of fighting over it, and how soldiers drowned in the mud, literally drowned in shell holes full of water, with their big heavy packs and their heavy uniforms, sodden, no way they could get out of it.